Hi, everyone. It's Adrian Pessel. Today's topic is when a seller is also a buyer. I want to talk to you about the options that your seller has. Your seller has choices. There's the home sale contingency with a kickout clause. There's a home of choice contingency. There's a seller's rent back. And there's also delayed settlement. All of these are options for your seller. Some may play out to be better depending on the situation and what your seller is actually looking for in their final home choice. So let's talk about option one, which is probably the most common one you'll hear, the home sale contingency with a kickout clause. This is when you have a seller who also becomes a buyer. We'll say this guy in the yellow here and his greenhouse. He's selling his house for 250 and he found his dream home and he really wants it and it's on the market for $500,000. Traditionally, what they would do is that your seller would go ahead and put an offer in on the $500,000 house and tell that seller that they would like a 30 days to sell their current home. And during that period of time of that contingency of 30 days, the seller from here, they receive an offer they think is better than their current offer from this guy over here. They will give your buyer, you're also your seller, 72 hours to get their act together to come up with the funds in order to purchase the house. If they don't do that, then these sellers right here have the option to kick your seller slash buyer out. Now, home sale contingencies and pros, and the pros is that the seller right here of seller of house one, who becomes the buyer of house two, gets the house that they want. So this works out well if you have a seller that has a particular house in an area that not a lot of homes come on the market, and this is a one of a kind, or maybe it's down the street from a family member, or it's a house that they've always wanted. So this would be an ideal way of them using the home sale contingency because there's only one of a kind home. The home sale contingency does have its negatives. So what they are is that seller one has a deadline now become a have to seller. The other negative to be aware of is that seller two, they're not going to take their house off the market for a low offer. Your seller one is probably going to offer a little bit closer to the full price, if not full price. And now your seller also, once they get in under contract, they're going to have some fears of running out of time because now they probably have already done a home inspection. They already have some money invested into this house. So if we look at the scenario, your seller slash buyer has a house that's $250,000. Fair market value says probably he could get an offer from between 245 and 248. The house that he wants is listed at 500, but probably fair market value might be 490 or 495. But like I said before, this seller isn't going to take their house off the market for somebody who has to sell for a maybe buyer unless they're going to get full price or real close to it. So they're going to lose this negotiating power right here. And also remember, since you're under the time frame of like 30 days, like I said before, becoming a have to seller normally may not take a 242 offer because the fair market value is like 245 to 248, but they may rationalize in their head, say, well, I'm going to get the house that I want, so I'll take a little less. So if you look at this scenario right here, and I know this is made up, you can get the point that I'm trying to make is that they might lose $10,000 on the purchase of their new home, of losing negotiating power, and they're going to lose maybe $3,000 on selling their own house. So you have a $13,000 potential loss in this scenario. That may not be a good idea to work it that way, especially when your seller has options. So option two would be a seller home of choice contingency. The different jurisdictions have different names for it, but the gist is that when a buyer comes in to want to buy their house, they make a contingency with the purchaser buying their $250,000 house that says, I have the right to find my home of choice first. And if I don't find my home of choice, then I can void our contract. The seller home of choice contingency doesn't always work out. It is an option, but you need to be aware of the pros and cons and when it can be used. Because you must remember that the purchaser buying your seller's home, they're expecting once the contract is negotiated that they get to buy their house. They're not going to always be willing to accept the home of choice contingency unless the seller has something to offer the purchaser. Could be maybe it is a seller's market and their offer gets selected over all the other ones because they're willing to let the seller find their home of choice. Two, the house is really desirable in an area that your seller can have the ability of being able to call the shots. Another way to do it is basically have a compromise. Let the buyers know, we will reimburse you for all your inspections up to a certain amount of money. You can have that written in there. If we choose to enact the home of choice clause and we don't end up finding a house that we like. But this is something that's worked on through the whole process. So what you would do if you have a seller who wants to do this, as soon as they put their house on the market, you will start taking them out and looking at houses, and they will have a first, second, and third pick. So once they do get an offer in, it's just a matter of finalizing the details. But then they get to go into that offer in purchasing their new home, not having to sell their current home, which gives them more negotiating power. Option 3 is for the seller to rent back from the purchasers. So let's say we have a purchaser that wants to buy my seller's house, and we just ask for an extended time for them to stay. Using that extended time period, they can have that extra time to find the property that they like, and they stay in their own home until that new house settles. The pros is that this allows the seller more time to move out and arrange the settlement of their new home. It also allows the seller additional time to find their next home without having a home sale contingency. The negative is the seller monthly cost will be more and the security deposit will be needed. The buyer's lender also may have a limit to time how long the seller can stay. So an agreement should be executed at time of contract to avoid any misunderstandings. What kind of security deposit, what's the PITI is going to be, and how long they're going to stay, and make sure that their lender is okay with it. So option 4 is a delayed settlement. Around here, that's normally 30 to 45 days, could be as long as 60. But what you would do, you would ask the buyer, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you can buy my house, but instead of settling in that 45-day time period, I want to extend my settlement. This way, the seller does not have to do a rent back. They don't have to do a home sale contingency. They don't have to do the home of choice, but they will have a long settlement time frame. Let's say the seller gets an offer on their property today. So instead of typically maybe having a settlement at the end of August or mid-September, you might push it out till October. This allows the seller additional time to find their next home without the home sale contingency or all the other hassles of doing a rent back. The con is that the typical loan lock-ins are for 60 days or less, which then can cost the buyer more money, or they might actually not be able to afford the loan if interest rates go up. So remember, your seller does have options. So hopefully that helps you guys out. I wish you all the best. If you have any questions, just put them in the comments below. And please remember to subscribe. Thanks.